Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Jody, and on my channel I talk about Broadway and books. And in today's video, I thought it'd be fun to put together a video where I talk about a few of my favorite books that I've read over the last few years, books that I don't necessarily hear many people talking about that much these days anymore. It's possible these books were very talked about when they were first released, but as far as like right now, they're books that, I just don't hear a lot of people talking about that much anymore. So, books that I feel deserve some hype, in case they've been forgotten about, perhaps. So, I'll be talking about 5 books here today, and they're books that I read either a few years ago or books that I read recently. So, I don't want to make this introduction any longer. So, here we go. So, the first book I'll be talking about today is a book called Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng. I believe this was her debut novel, and did I say I read it in 2018? I don't know how to edit videos, so in case I said that already, I'm going to say it again. I read this book in 2018, and it's just by far one of my favorite books I've read in my life. Definitely one of my favorite books of all time. This is a book that I read a few years ago and I have not read since. So as far as the details of the specifics of the story, I don't remember everything super clear, but I remember enough that I remember the story I really connected to, and it's just a story I never forgot, even though I forgot some of the details perhaps, but the overall story I just remember I really loved, and it was like quite a heavy read. It deals heavily with grief, loss, and tragedy, and how that, the aftermath of, the people who are left behind face with that loss. And it was just a beautifully told story, beautifully tragic told story, but it's just one I really connected to, and it's one I've never forgotten about. And so, I would say when it comes to books by Celeste Ng, I would say I still hear a lot of people talking about Little Fires Everywhere, and I read that book as well. I would have to say, though, out of the two, this is still by far my favorite book of hers. I did enjoy Little Fires Everywhere, but this is just my favorite out of hers. And I feel like, if you've read Little Fires Everywhere and you haven't read Everything I Never Told You yet, I highly recommend it. I think you'll really love it. It's just a wonderful book. It's a very heavy read, but I feel like it's still worth reading nonetheless. And yeah, so that's that. So I'll get on to my next book now. This is a book I read in 2019, and that would be In a Dark, Dark Wood by Ruth Ware. It's the first Ruth Ware book that I've read. I since believe I have all of the books that she's written at this point, but this is the only one I've read so far. So I'll eventually get to the others at some point. But yeah, I read this in 2019, and this was just definitely by far one of the best mystery thrillers I've ever read. This is a book that, like the one like Everything I Never Told You. I remember I overall really enjoyed my time reading it, and I really loved it. As far as the details of the specifics of the storylines and stuff like that, I do not remember that as much. But, eventually I'll probably reread these 2 books because I love them so much, and I remember enough that I like them. Just don't remember, I'm not going to give a review on the books today because I obviously don't remember everything. But yeah, this deals with, I believe, like a writer who is kind of like keeps to herself, and she gets invited to a bachelorette party by like a former best friend, and she's not sure if she's going to go, and then she decides to go, and then just like weird stuff starts happening. And I do remember the twists and turns were very unpredictable and very surprising. And there was a pretty big reveal at the end, I remember. And I think that's what made me really like this book a lot. It's just that Ruth Ware has a really great way of like surprising you with these twists, turns, and reveals that like I just find very unpredictable. And, I feel like, with Ruth Ware, a lot of the books that she writes, people either really like or they don't. But if you haven't read this, this is definitely one of the best mystery thrillers that I've read, and I can't recommend it enough. So I'll get on to the next book that I will be talking about. That'll be The Lost Ticket by Freya Sampson. This book I read last February, and this was a book that I picked up at the bookstore, honestly, because the cover is just so cute and so nice, and I really liked it. So, but honestly, it wasn't a book I heard anybody talking about before that. And like I said, it's possible when these books were released, they were very talked about. But as far as right now, as far as even when I read the book like a year ago, I wasn't really hearing a lot of people talk about it. So, yeah, I picked it up to read, not knowing much about what it was going to be about, and I came away with one of my favorite books of all time now. It was just one of the sweetest, most charming, most kind stories I've ever read. It's a story that truly I connected to and loved every single second of it. Characters that were just so kind. And, a lot of times in the world you feel like it feels like there's no hope, but then you read a book like this and you realize, there is hope and kindness out there in the world. And, it's really nice to read about stories like this. So, yeah, I mean, I can't recommend this enough. If you haven't read this and you need just like a hug, this is definitely the book. It's just so wonderful, so sweet, so kind, and I love it so much. Okay, the next book I'll be talking about today is a book I read over the summer. This was a book I finished reading in September, but I started reading it I think in July. It's a bit of a long book. I think it's, how many pages is this? Because I remember it being quite long. It's, I believe, 328 pages, but the font size is very small. So, because of that, it's a long book and the font size is small. But that being said, I don't know why I got off track there. But, yeah, I read this, a few months ago, and I went into it thinking it was going to be like a mystery thriller just based on the premise of the story, the premise of the story. And it's very much a slow burn mystery that deals heavily with grief, loss, and tragedy and the aftermath that those who are left behind face. I would say it has a very similar tone to Everything I Never Told You. Like, if you like Everything I Never Told You, you would definitely like Saint X and vice versa. But yeah, this is definitely a book that I really connected to. The characters were also well written, and it was a story that was kind of told in what might be considered a complicated way. There's a lot of, points of view in this. The story is really told from two perspectives, but there's a lot of voices in this story, and if you read the book, you'll know what I mean. Other characters talk here and there throughout the story, and just the way the book was put together and written was just so incredible, because, it could have been too much, and it could have been complicated or, confusing, but Alexis Schaitkin just did an absolutely amazing job putting this story together. It was just absolutely incredible. And it's just a story that, once I really started getting into it, I just absolutely loved. And you might have heard about this book because Hulu did make a TV series adaptation that was put up last April on the streaming service. And if you have watched the show and you didn't perhaps like it, like myself, I'd say pick up the book to read. The book is by far much better than the show. Yeah, the TV series adaptation was a bit disappointing. I don't want to say anything negative about the show because at the end of the day, it takes a lot of people to put together a TV show. But yeah, it was just not the best in my opinion, and I can't recommend this book enough to read. It's definitely a heavy read because it deals with grief, loss, and tragedy, and it also deals with questions, being left unanswered, and how that can be frustrating and difficult to get through, not knowing answers to questions you really want answers to, and that's just sometimes how life goes. And I thought it was a really the way that the author kind of left the story, it was a very brave way to go because you don't really get a lot of questions answered, and that's not giving anything away by any means, but I felt like because of that aspect it stayed very true to real life, because sometimes in life we just don't get every question answered. And I just thought that was a really great creative decision, writing decision. But yeah, definitely recommend this book. It deserves some hype. And then the last book I'll be talking about today is I'll just move these books for a second. The last book I'll be talking about today is a book I actually just reviewed on my channel recently, and that's Something from Tiffany's by Melissa Hill. This was a book I literally never heard about until I heard it was going to be adapted into a film. And so I had this book for quite a while, and I just felt like finally watching the film, but I like to read the book first. And I picked it up to read, and it was just such a cute, fun, romantic comedy, and it's just a book I really don't hear anybody talking about. And after reading it, this book deserves to be talked about. It's just, if you need just a fun book to read, nothing serious, just fun, I can't recommend this enough. And they did make a Amazon original film adaptation, and it was really well done. So you have a really great adaptation to watch after you read this book. But yeah, really great characters. And if you like a rom-com, I can't recommend this enough. So thank you so very much for watching today's video, where I talked about some books that I feel like, deserve some hype that perhaps maybe you weren't aware of, or books that maybe have been forgotten about. But yeah, it's always fun to discover new books, and so I thought this video would be fun to put together to let you all know about some books that maybe you weren't aware of. So if you made it to this point of the video, again, thank you so very much for watching. Until next time, bye.